The name Karen Brook has become synonymous with the name Bob Proctor, and not without good reason. Karen worked closely with the world-famous mentor, bringing his teachings back to Australia and in the process helping those who study with her to live more fulfilling, dynamic lives. I'm so grateful to Karen for squeezing this chat into her very busy schedule and for her candid answers to all my questions. From growing up in Birdsville to running an ultra marathon through the Simpson Desert, I hope our conversation will inspire you as much as it did me. Karen Brook, thank you so much for joining me. I've been so looking forward to this.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me. Me too. We've been talking about it for a while, so I'm so glad that we can be here together having this conversation.
Karen, what I'm really looking forward to is anybody can get on the internet and find out what you do and what your beliefs are, but I want to find out who Karen Brook is today. So, I'm really very focused on that. But I have something to show you that I'm very proud of. I think it was 32 days ago, my daughter and I completed your Elevate course at the Gold Coast, which we absolutely loved. And on day one, you had us write out this little paragraph about a paradigm. So we wrote this out. And then you said, write that paradigm out with your other hand.
Yeah.
And you focused in on me and you said, yes, Kelly Shan, that's what you have to do. Because I must have had a look of horror. Well, I have written it out every single day since.
Yay!
I know you only said to write it out for 28 days, but I'm on my 32nd day, so I'm very
good. I love that. Well, you know what? I just finished I did the 30 days. I started a couple of days later because I was obviously teaching at that conference, but I just did my 30 days as well, and we've had all of the clients that were there are all writing in like they just got their 30 days, and some people are still going, so I would go another 30 days, Kelly. How about that?
Oh, yeah, I will. Well, do you know what?
Get to 90 days.
I've created a habit and I actually look forward to it now, and it's a real challenge. But do you know another interesting thing? So I lost my mum when I was really young. She had passed away from a brain tumour, but she'd had an operation and she was in hospital, of course, and had to learn how to talk and write again. And I've actually found her hospital book back from, I guess it was probably 1973. And in this book, it reminds me so much of my left-handed writing because she's had to learn. So I've gained strength and commitment from what she did all those years ago. So there you go.
Isn't that beautiful? And in your case, you know, she was doing it to experience her life again. In your case, you're doing it to experience a greater version of your life. That with the writing with your non-dominant hand is symbolic of when we want to create growth and transformation, it doesn't always feel easy. But the longer we do it, the more we do it, the better we get at it, the more comfortable we are of feeling uncomfortable. You know, as human beings, we don't readily put ourselves in situations and hold ourselves in it. Experience the discomfort, but knowing we're moving towards a greater version of ourselves in the process. So I love that. That's so special.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you for introducing me to left-handed writing. Now, Karen, I'd like to start with your childhood. So tell me, you know, where you grew up and what your childhood and family dynamics were like.
Yeah, so I grew up in a tiny town named Birdsville in far western Queensland. So I'm one of 6 children, and my parents are organic beef producers in Western Queensland. I went to the Birdsville State School, so my first 7 years of school, and I went to boarding school in Adelaide. You know, I did preschool over the radio, over the HF radio, sitting in the passageway of our house, and you know, Mum and Dad would have to fly us between Birdsville and Baduri for school sports, or we would go to Windora for the sports camp, very small school. So I very much had that country childhood upbringing where you could, you know, leave school, no shoes, cruise around to the friends' houses, or, you know, we'd be playing out in the back in the old horse floats and old cars, bare feet, jump, like that was my childhood growing up in Birdsville, swimming in the Billabong. And I always knew we all, as the second last of 6 kids, I was number 5, that boarding school was just what happened. There were very few children. I don't think there was any child that actually did School of the Air for high school. There was some kids on properties that did it for primary school, but we all just knew that we were all going to boarding school when we got to year 8. So I went off to Adelaide and went to boarding school in Adelaide, and only saw my parents on school holidays. It was too far to go between Birdsville and Adelaide for weekends that they call exeats. They were weekends that you had to leave the boarding house. So I would go and stay with mum and dad's family or friends, usually friends. Dad's an only child and mum's from South Africa. So we didn't have cousins or aunts and uncles. So friends became that for me in high school. And I would see mum and dad, if they happened to be in Adelaide during a term, I might see them for a night. And then I just saw them on holidays.
Gosh, that's another story in itself, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mum coming from South Africa to Birdsville, of all places. And, I imagine she probably didn't have that thought in her mind that she would have to leave, let her little babies go off to boarding school at such a young age. And, that's something that so many bush women have trouble dealing with. And I'm sure your mum did too. So
yeah. But at the same time, Kelly, I guess my mum and dad didn't really have another option. But also, whilst I very much did not enjoy it the first couple of years, and now being a parent, I think about all of the tears and the crying and how difficult that would have been for mum, but with no other option really than to leave me there. But I'm also so grateful for boarding school, for that opportunity, for what I learnt, I think country kids are always pretty resilient anyway, but, I'm very grateful for the friendships, the discipline, the structure. I think it made it very easy to learn and be successful in high school because the routine and the structure was there. So, for me, I don't look back on it with any sort of, I'm very grateful for it, that I had the opportunity to go to boarding school and have a great education.
Well, it certainly broadens your horizons, and for bush kids, the social skills that you gain through going to boarding school.
I didn't even know how to catch a bus. I remember in year 8 not knowing how to get off the bus, and there was like 3 of us little year 8 kids, and it just kept going and I was still on it and everyone had gotten off the bus. There's this little kid from Birdsville. I had no idea. The first day that it rained in class, I was just at the window staring out. I just never seen so much rain. I just, I went from one of a class of, the whole school was 13 from year 1 to year 7 in Birdsville. That was it. 13 kids in the whole school to one class of 30. I look back on it now and it just, I laugh at it, but I was so, I had no idea what I was getting myself in for.
I think that is really a big thing for bush kids and bush adults too, is being able to make that transition from being really very much in your own company to having so many people around you all the time. And how did you go with that transition, Karen?
Well, I remember the first night of you sleep in these dormitories and there was 4 of us and we were all lying there and the lights were off and eventually someone spoke. It was like, are you awake? Are you awake? I think that, and I'm still friends with those girls today, actually. Of all of the people that I met during boarding school, the ones that I have maintained the most relationship are the ones that I was in year 8 with, because I think, it was a baptism of fire for us. We stuck together. We lent on each other. We made the best of it that we could. And, fortunately living in Birdsville, I will say it's a little bit of a tourism mecca So I was somewhat used to large crowds. We'd have variety bashes and car rallies and the Birdsville races, and there'd be 60 people out the back of mum and dad's house, once a year, 100, So I was used to large crowds, but I was not used to not being with my parents for that long a time, where I had to now conform to somebody else's rules, somebody else's timeline. I went from living a very kind of independent, but I think bush kids are independent, being able to drive a car at, when I was young, freedom to run out the back, to go visit friends. So a very independent sort of free life in Birdsville to having to be very independent, but in a highly structured environment. And that was very difficult for me, that someone else was going to tell me what time I had to wake up and go to bed. And, I really struggled with that and, struggled with the authority around it. I don't know how I ended up being head boarder, because I certainly retaliated against a lot of the authority.
I'm hearing rebellion all through that.
Yeah, I was just like, hey, the stories I could tell you what the boys would get away with, but the girls couldn't. I was not having any of that.
Yeah. What's your early career look like once you left school?
Kelly, I actually wanted to study medicine. That was my goal in high school. I wanted to become a doctor. I wanted to become a raw flying doctor. So all of my senior subjects were set up for that. And I missed out. I got an interview with James Cook University, and I missed out by about, I think it was 0.25 of a mark. I was very close to getting in. And I got that news when we were on a family holiday straight after high school in South Africa. And I remember my mum coming in and telling me my score. And I rolled back over and she said, oh, congratulations, this is your score. And I just rolled back over and I said, it's not enough. I was devastated. I really had set myself up for success in a career in medicine. And so I thought, well, I'll go and study nursing. I'll go and do nursing for 6 months, and very quickly realised that wasn't for me. I deferred and went back to Birdsville. I hadn't deferred at that point. I thought I'll go external and I'll go live in Birdsville for a while. I hadn't spent any time at home since I was 12. So by this stage I was 18, and I remember there was one particular day the flying doctor was coming in and the nurse said, why don't you come over and you can help out at the clinic? And I called them back and I said, no, thanks. And that's when I knew it wasn't for me. I think I'd also kind of maybe got to the point where I thought maybe medicine wasn't for me. Cut a long story short, I spent the next year and a half working in Birdsville, and then I discovered that I really wanted to help rural and regional businesses get themselves out there. So I actually went back to university and I studied, of all things, if you can believe it, graphic design and communications. I just had this business vision to create a business that would serve rural and regional clients, that they could do business with somebody that knew their backstory, knew where they lived, was invested in their success, rather than having to go and work with a firm in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane who really didn't care whether they survived or failed. So with the business idea in mind, I thought, well, what degree should I get to help me with the business? And that was my whole thought process. I'd studied all of the science subjects, all of the math subjects in high school. So this was a massive turn of field, but I just wanted to start the business to help rural and regional businesses succeed. So that's what I did. I literally found a great degree on the Sunshine Coast that had lots of lecturers that had moved there for a lifestyle change. Got my degree in 2.5 years. Can you believe it? They gave me credit for my nursing subjects for 6 months as my electives. Got my degree in 2.5 years, and my first big contract was rebranding the Quilpie Shire Council in Western Queensland, and that's how it started. So that was my early career. My 20s was spent growing that business, doing branding and rebrand projects for local governments, government departments in Central and Western Queensland, branding small businesses, so all their logo design, their marketing collateral, their website design. Back when, this was well before we had the software we do now. This was, you still had to know coding. You had to know how to design with the Adobe Creative Suite. Like that's what my training was, university level design and communications. And I ran that business for most of my 20s. And that sort of, that then morphed into more brand strategy. I was then helping people with the business side of it. How do we actually make this profitable, Karen? What do we do? You know, that was my mid to late 20s. So then I was consulting more on business strategy, brand strategy. That moved into very traditional business coaching. And then I went more into more the high performance mindset, executive level, human performance and success. So that's sort of where it started and where we are today.
It's kind of like a stepping stone, and no doubt, you know, as a young person, you would have been totally devastated not having, you know, made it into medicine, and then try and change your thoughts around, right, how am I going to get there, or what am I going to do? But did you look back and think, well, it's probably a good thing that I didn't, because now I realise that wasn't my path?
It's an interesting question because I did reconsider it in my late 20s. I was probably 26 or 27, and I really reconsidered it. I applied again to James Cook University. I had two friends. One was an SMO out in Charleville, and she wrote an endorsement letter for me to say, yes, she'd make a great doctor. I had another friend who's now an anaesthetist, and you know, he was like, oh, are you sure? You've actually got a pretty successful business. Like, I don't know whether you want to give all of that away and go back and study medicine. So I had these two really good friends in my life. One was basically saying, yes, I think you'd be great, but if you're going to do it, you need to do it now. From her perspective, to sort of go through the training and then specialise, and then I'd be in my late 30s where I am now. The other one was sort of saying, you've actually got a great business. You're doing very well. Are you sure you want to give that up? And ironically, I got the interview again and I declined it. So intuitively, something in me was like, that's not for you, you know? And I wonder whether, looking back, part of it maybe was because it's tangible. We all know what a doctor is. You know, we can label it, we can identify it, we can judge it, we can stand behind it. And what I was doing was different. It was different to what anyone in my family, no one in my family had ever run their own company before or built their own business up until then. It was different from my friends. So maybe a little part of me was, you know, maybe still seeking that for an identity or for a career path that was known. Whereas I was very much making a career path that was very unknown. Even the last 10 years, you know, it was very unknown, the work that I'm doing in Australia. It's more well known now. But I think I just intuitively knew that wasn't for me. That wasn't my work in the world. That wasn't for me. And I've got some beautiful friends who are amazing doctors, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful that it's not me.
Yeah. It's interesting, that thought pattern, and I hadn't considered that before, but, you know, we do kind of like to label ourselves, don't we? So as I'm a mother, or I'm a housewife, or I'm a brazier, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a nurse, or, you know, how do you label yourself these days, Karen?
And you know what's another thing about that? When we talk to people, our first, what do you do? You don't hear people asking, who are you? You know, our first question is, what do you do? Because quickly, subconsciously, we can make all sorts of assumptions and biases and, you know, very, very quickly, but that should never be the conversation. You know, what we do is always going to be transient. It's never the essential. You know, if you were to say, who are you? I'd say, well, I'm a spiritual being. I think I'm having this experience. I've got a physical body, but I'm not my name. I'm not my body. But we don't open up a conversation like that with somebody, you know? So I think it's important that we're never one thing. You know, I think we got to start to, anyway. What was your question, Kelly? I'm getting off track there. I was about to launch into a seminar.
Well, my next question is, what drew you to this? Because it's kind of a metaphysical way of thinking, would you agree?
Mm.
And to Bob Proctor in particular.
Mm. Yeah, I think, for me, it's not even a way of thinking, it's a way of being. I would go beyond. I think the way of thinking, we could try to box it and say, well, there's this way of thinking and there's that way of thinking and there's that way of being. But really what drew me to it, because it's a way of being the wholeness of who we are. Knowing thyself, it's a way of understanding ourselves and how we fit into this world, this universe, how and why we are the way we are, understanding the whole dimension of who we are. We all have a non-physical side of ourselves. We know that walking into a room, if someone's in a bad mood, we can feel it. We have energy that we release. And so I think what drew me to Bob probably was for that exact reason. I was very intellectually equipped. I had a undergraduate degree. I'd studied at postgraduate level. I'd studied leadership through Harvard. I'd done a partial master's degree in organizational analysis, all of these methods of thinking and frameworks. And when I met Bob, Bob Proctor, he opened me up to more of a way of being and a way of understanding yourself and why we're creating the results that we're creating. Because at the end of the day, no one cares about degrees. We only are interested in whether we're creating the results that we want in our life or not, and then how to close that gap. And he really helped me understand where I was at and why I was frustrated with my results, had plateaued and I felt stuck, and that there was nothing wrong with me, that I didn't need to go and get a master's degree. I wouldn't all of a sudden feel worthy when I was 40 or a CEO. Like, if I don't have it now, I've got to get it for myself. The answers weren't outside of me. And so he really was able to guide me and show me that framework to understand myself in a new way that then would allow me to begin to create the life that I really wanted, take the guesswork out of it. And, he will say the work is not his alone. He's spent his whole life studying how it all works and organizing the information. And I love that. I love that it isn't just a methodology or one particular, it is us and the universe, us and the world around us and the non-physical side of who we are, and, making that mainstream now. And I love the role that I've played in that, particularly growing up in the country and being able to take these very big concepts that in the past may have seemed untouchable, or we don't talk about that, or it's not, it's not truck talk, but now it is. We can talk about it in a way that's relatable and that can make a difference. So, that's what I love about what I get to do now.
So, Karen, do you think he singled you out, or did you single him out, or was it just a natural progression that you were so taken with what he was teaching that you became, so aligned with him?
I think we always attract what we need when we need it and who we need. So up until that point, I'd also attracted some other incredible mentors and coaches and guides into my life. But no one was teaching it in the way that he was, or the depth that he was. He was willing to go deep and unashamedly. Spirituality, the universe, laws of the universe, not the most saleable thing in the world, right? Pretty easy to sell something very mechanical. He wasn't afraid of that. He's like, if I don't teach you about the whole of who you are, you're only going to get half of it. If you're involved in coaching or business development, you're not working with the whole of the business, all aspects of it, then you're only working with half of it. So I was very attracted to that. And it just resonated so much. And the reason why it resonates is because it speaks to the truth of who we are. I mean, it resonates because he's talking to you about you, and you can't shy away with that. And if you're challenged by that, then you're challenged by a part of yourself. And so I love that. And I just, the second that I really started to study and apply what he was teaching to my own life and see the benefits so quickly that I was receiving. And I was doing pretty well, and I think most people are, but we can do better, and we can unashamedly do better, and we shouldn't feel guilty about wanting to improve or do better. And there's plenty of people around us and plenty of voices that'll say, you should be satisfied, you haven't already got a lot. And it's like, well, I can be grateful, but satisfaction is the first step to disintegration. Like, if we're satisfied, it means life is as good as it's going to get now. No one wants that. It's the fastest way to death. So I just decided, I didn't realize that I could become a consultant at the time. That was never on my radar, ever. In fact, when I became a PGI consultant and started to teach Bob's material back here in Australia, it was a very new thing. There was not a lot of us around the world. I mean, there's quite a lot now, but back then we were very much the trailblazers. So when I brought it back to Australia, it was like, who's this American? Bob's not even American, but like, that's where it was like, there's this young blonde Birdsville girl now teaching this era, the old man stuff. Like, who's going to be interested in that? Like, that was what I was up against that long ago. But I didn't care what anyone else thought. I was like, I'm just going to find people that are willing to listen and hear what I've got to say. And it kind of took off from there. And, the results, I didn't need to prove a point if the results proved it.
Yeah. So, Karen, what was Bob like as a man? Like, I have imaginings of what he was like and what it would be like to sit down and speak with him. But from your perspective, tell me about Bob Proctor, the man.
Yeah, look, he was very calm, very peaceful, but he was very on purpose. So you never sat down for a conversation with Bob being like, I would say unprepared, in the sense that you didn't want to waste an opportunity to talk with him, but he would also very quickly draw out of you the real question or the real problem. And that's what a great coach and mentor does. That you could take a list of questions to him and he'd sit there and then he'd fire something back at you, that kind of made all the questions that you just brought to him completely irrelevant. He bypassed them and he sidetracked them, and he was really just very interested in you. And he was a very generous man, extremely generous, not only in his time and energy, but financially. He donated a lot of money, supported a lot of people. He was very, very generous in what he would give. And I think not only did he see the best in you, he knew how to draw it out of you. And I think that's a gift. Not only did he see it, he then knew how to get you acting on that, becoming that. He could give you a process to use, and it worked. And there was this sort of strength, this steely knowingness of him, that when he gave you a suggestion, you went and did it because there was truth in it, And he would say, well, you don't even have to believe me, but go do the thing and prove to yourself that this will work for you too. Yeah. So, he just had no ego. He just worked so from source, from spirit. No matter what you read or hear or say, like, he just truly was unconditional in his wanting of greater good for you. No matter who you were, where you were from, your background, your story, he was so unconditional in knowing that you could become a greater version of yourself, and he wanted to help you get there.
Karen, one thing I think you're very good at is making people squirm. And I'm wondering, with some of the things, you have to write your goals down, write down what you really want, and then stand up and read it. But so, and I squirmed during that those Elevate sessions. Please don't pick me to stand up. Did you learn that from Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. He also taught me to not bring ego into the room. It's not about you. It's not what you think they're thinking of you. It's about the person. Tell the truth. You have a duty of care, like help them succeed, help them win. get them on the edge of their seat, push them out into their comfort zone, and never be afraid of what they think about you. He said, your job is to like you. My job is to like me. I love me, right? If you don't like me, if you don't love me, that's on you, but I like me. And my job is to help you like you, right? You get to where you want to go. So I think the skill of being able to hold that space and not go back into your own head of, do I look silly on stage, or is this a silly suggestion, or should I or shouldn't I? Very much. I flew to and from Toronto, Canada 3 or 4 times a year for the best part of 8 years to be mentored by him and watch him and be on stage with him, and all of those little things that I think are part of his legacy that he's taught me that I can share now in the Karen Brook way. I'm not trying to be him. I do it the way I want to do it now, and I think that's really nice to be so sure about what you're saying and what you're doing that I can let it come out the way I would say it. But he always used to say, do it your way, but stay true to the work, like the intention. Don't stay authentic with the basis of the work, the foundation of the work. And, so I think that's a real gift. But he was an absolute showman on stage. Like, there's no doubt about it. I think I'm funnier on stage than Bob Proctor. But he was definitely a showman on stage.
Yeah. Well, you're a show person as well. So
yeah,
seeing you in action. Karen, fear, it just makes us stop doing so much stuff. It makes us squirm and carry on. So what's your take on fear, and how do we get past that?
Well, I think we've got to get used to the feeling of fear and not give it a power over us that it doesn't deserve. Fear is an emotion that we experience when we're moving away from homeostasis. Now, what is homeostasis? It's order. It's the way we've always done it. It's the routine thinking, the routine habits, I know how to respond to this in this way, in this situation. When we go to experience something, a little bit outside of that, we're probably okay. If it's prolonged or we experience something very different, even entertaining a new thought, because thoughts are energy, we're used to living in a particular feeling state. We refer to that as vibration, but it's just feeling. These words should never make you wriggle. Manifestation is just receiving, vibration is just feeling. And that fear, when we go to step out of that box, then good or bad, even if it's for something we really want, we will still experience the fear. The house that you really want to buy, that you can afford, or you think you can afford, but you really want it, you've got this, you will still feel that fear, because what's actually happening is it's a reaction on the central nervous system. We're going to act on an idea, an image of ourself. And so we feel that in our body. What happens is when we don't understand it, it stops us moving forward. It keeps us stuck. It keeps us in bondage, where we just, and then we think, well, in 6 months later, in 12 months later, it'll be easier. And we try again. Same thing happens and we go back to bondage. We reason with a new idea. Maybe this time it'll be easier. And so the more we understand ourselves and we understand this psychological process of growth, the more empowered we are. We've all heard the saying, feel the fear and do it anyway, but you actually can't until you understand it, And then when you understand that it's a normal byproduct of growth and I'm moving towards, and actually, you know what, I'm fine. Like, nothing bad is going to happen here just by me making this decision and taking this action that I want to do. We can move through it. But it is a very real reaction. Your livingness, your life force, your mind and your brain, it's not the mind actually, your brain and body's ability to keep you safe. The second you move away from that homeostasis where it's just all normal operating system, you'll feel that fear, fight or flight. The threat, your goal is a threat to your subconscious mind. The new idea, the thing you want, the career, the job, the business, as far as your mind is concerned, it's a threat. So we want to abort mission. We want to take it away for good or bad in your life. Like the fear isn't just when something's bad. Like we want the amygdala, that reptilian brain. When we see a snake, we want that to kick in and pull our foot back. You know, when we go to step across the road and there's a car, we want that automatic pull us back. But when we go to step out in our life, we've also learned to fear the unknown. When we have kids climbing a playground, oh, be careful you don't fall. You know, be careful, watch that. And so as children, and we grow up as adults, we're programmed to fear the unknown. Makes it difficult then, Kelly, when you want to step out and go and achieve a new goal, or buy a dress that you're not used to buying the dress, or it can be as simple as that. We are overcome with fear, doubt, and worry. Fear on a conscious level, doubt and worry on a subconscious level. And if we don't do something with it, we internalize it and we feel anxious. If we suppress it, we end up with, becoming depressed. It's a body that's not at ease. So when we understand fear and we study ourselves, we have faith. And it's that faith based in understanding, not just blind faith, it's faith based in an understanding about who we are and how we can go through transformation and growth, which is necessary for everything, setting and achieving your own goals, change in a business, succession planning in a family, stages of raising children. There are all of these stages which require us to move into the unknown. So, without this understanding, we've got a society of people who actually have no basis to work through transformation. When we study it and understand it, we can, doesn't mean we're not going to feel the fear, doubt, and worry, but we won't be held by it. We'll be able to keep moving through it and towards more of what we want. And that's real freedom. And being able to master your mind and stay in control, no matter what else is going on, and move through that to get more of life, really.
Karen, talk me through the Simpson Desert Ultra that you've done twice, I think you said, because no doubt you had to master your mind to do that and move past the fear. So tell me how all that transpired.
Well, I'll tell you, the first time that I enrolled, I had some Dutch courage backed by a couple of glasses of champagne. When I signed up the first time, I'm not going to lie to you, Kelly, or your listeners, that it was the couple of glasses of champagne that made me go to the website and sign up.
You know what? I'm never going to drink champagne ever again.
I don't know, but I was like, I want to. So here was my rationale. So that was a 250-kilometre ultramarathon in 2016. It was a multi-stage race. So 42 kilometres on the first day, the second day, the third day, all marathons. The third day was 30 Ks, as if that makes a difference, 10 Ks. Day 4 was 84 kilometres, and day 5 was just a 10K into town or something. And so it was a pretty big event. My sister had done it the year before, and the race was actually on our cattle property, Adriadown Station in Western Queensland. So there was a little bit of a personal, I should go and do this event. It's on our amazing race directors, an amazing organisation. They now do the Big Red Bash out there. They put on the big music festival. So it was the same organisers that did the run. And I was probably 2 or 3 years into sort of my coaching and mentoring work. And I thought, you know what, I can challenge myself in business, a bigger financial goal, grow the business. Professionally, I have no issue confronting my terror barriers, my fears, and moving forward. But personally, I'd always kind of let myself off the hook. I would sign up to do the Manila Ultra, and then I'd find a reason why I couldn't train for it, or, I'd go and sign up to something. I just would never really follow through. And I thought, okay, now that I know what I know and what Bob has taught me, let me test this program, let me test this process for something in my personal life that I would otherwise never consider doing. The first time I did it, I really just wanted to demonstrate to my clients that you could apply this to something that feels very uncomfortable and you could do it. So that was the first year. And the power of the mind over the body, that we can do hard, like as in we can achieve goals that feel big for us when we have our mind working properly for us, not against us. So that was really how the first year came about. And I completed the whole event. On day 5, the 82-kilometre day, I feel like I broke my knee. I didn't break my knee, but I completely I was very hurt at about 34 kilometres and I couldn't continue. Because the thing is, Kelly, even though I signed up for this race, I didn't really train for it. So I felt like I trained mentally, but I went for a couple of 8K runs around the Brisbane River. I slogged out a 50K in the Blue Mountains as my training for this event. You know, I didn't respect the distance. I didn't respect the goal, but I was like, I've got a great mindset. Let me see what I can do. And honest, hand on heart, that was literally my training. But I would visualize and I would do the mental work and I'd listen to my lessons on the run and keep my mind focused that it couldn't get into how sore my body was. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding. Yes, my body did break on day 5, but I did complete most of the event. And then the next year I thought, I think I want to do it again. Crazy, right? But we all get that sort of, not initially. Initially I was on crutches and my legs were swollen for a little while.
Well, it sounds so much fun.
Yeah, but the next year I thought, I want to do this. I don't want to do the 250, but they had it was called the Little Red Run. It was 150K. After that year, they didn't refer to it as little and big again. It was just 250 or 150, because 150 is still quite a long way. and I thought, and I'm going to train for it. I'm really going to close that knowing doing gap between what I know I need to do and what I'm actually doing. I'm going to prepare mentally and physically for this time. So I remember after Christmas or I was thinking it was after Christmas and too many hams and too many champagnes, I took my little body out and I ran around the block for 20 minutes. And that was how I started. And I started running 20 minutes, literally just around my couple of blocks in my suburb. And I would walk, run. And every week, and then on the weekend, I would do a little bit of a long run. And every week I added 5 minutes. And that was it. I basically made a deal with myself and I said, I'll run 3 times a week and do 1 longer run on the weekend. And I will commit to that for the 6 months in the leading up to this event, backed with obviously practicing what I teach in terms of creating those paradigm shifts and the new self-image of someone doing this, the new habits. And it was amazing. Through that time, by the time it came to the end of it, I was running a half marathon as my long run on a Saturday morning, walk running. And I think we got to change the narrative around that running is also walk running. You know, you don't have to be a runner and be able to run the whole time. You don't have to look a certain way to be able to do events like this. Ultra running teaches you so much about that, the community. You know, everyone looks different body shapes, sizes, speeds. It doesn't matter. It's like your own experience out there. So I felt so good. Like it was a win for me, Kelly, standing at the start line knowing I was prepared, that at this time I'd actually followed through. I was so proud of myself. And then to go through the event, and about halfway through, I realized that I was leading. And it was never my intention to try to win. There was about 10 of us in that category, never before. And I thought, I'm going to have a crack at this. I'm going to see if I can actually be first overall in this. And I started to, every day I went into each day with sort of like the best time that I could do, my next best, and just finishing. It was like my fantasy time, my next best time, and then finishing on each day. And most days I would sort of be first. A couple of days I was second over the line. And on the last big day was another marathon, day 5. And God, I had such a good run. So it took me about 6 hours 20. but it's not a flat track. We're running through the desert and all the rest of it. But I was so proud. Like, I was so happy with myself, and I ended up, winning overall, male and female category, which just blew my mind. But it was a testament to exactly what I teach: setting a big goal, following the process, building that foundation that'll support you in the end, and having a crack, betting on yourself and having a go. And it wouldn't have mattered whether I did finish first or not. I'd already won signing up and getting to the start line, but it was pretty cool. And I happened to be 3 weeks pregnant at the time and didn't even realize it. So that was quite funny after the fact. Wouldn't recommend that, don't go into an event like that knowing that, but I didn't know. So
yeah. Sometimes if you don't know things, it's a little bit better.
I know. I'm so glad I didn't have any clue. I had no idea. So,
Oh, Karen, that's a remarkable story, and something that so many people can relate to, and especially with what you teach, it's proof in the pudding, isn't it? That, once you have that mindset, it doesn't matter what it is, you can achieve.
Yeah.
Karen, how do you move through, your low times, or, if things don't go, things aren't going well, or how do you get out of that hole that you might be in, or the rut that you might be in?
I think there's a couple of things. One thing is that I study every day. Now, this was a foreign idea to me. Before Bob taught me how to study, I thought that study was something you did when you go to TAFE, you go to university, okay, I'm studying now. That was my association to studying. It had never occurred to me, nor had I ever been shown how to form the habit of studying every day to improve yourself for the rest of your life. Like, no one had given me a formula or a process or a way of approaching that. So even when my circumstances, whether they're good or bad, I'm studying, right? So that's the first foundation that I have. At the same time, I wouldn't say second to this, I'd say at the same time, I remember that I'm the essential. So that the circumstances may be what they are, but I still have a choice in how I think in relation to them. And so that's how I get myself through ups and downs. And what I've found is the longer I've been doing this, the ups and downs, then the ups are not as high and the downs are not as low. Everything that goes up must come down. That's the law of rhythm. And we can be like this through life. And so now I feel like my life is a little bit more like this. The peaks and the troughs aren't as much. The wins are there, but I expect them to be there. If the things are not playing out how I want them to, I harvest the good, I learn from it, I respond to it. And I remember that if I and this is something everyone, if we rise or fall with our circumstances, we're always going to be dependent on something outside of us to feel better about ourselves or to change or to transform. When you know that you've got you, that you are in control of you, how you think, how you feel, how you act, and that's not the easiest thing to do unless you train yourself to do it, then we can respond to our circumstances instead of reacting to them. We can choose a new thought in response. We can move through the circumstances. We can let them be what they are and still move through them. And so that's how I now, no matter, what I'm facing, the same habits that I use when things are going well, I apply them even when things are not going well. And that gives me a very confident basis to sort of create life from.
That's a huge takeaway is, to react or respond to, let yourself react to things or let yourself respond to things. And you're right, it is so hard to know that we have that choice, isn't it? So I need to do a bit more training in that respect, Karen, I'll be honest.
Oh, look, I think it's forever, it's because there could be something completely new that you're faced with but once we practice the habit, we get better at it. And when we understand that when we respond, we're in control, we're choosing our thoughts. When we react, it's the situation that has the power, that we're going to react automatically from what the thoughts or the old beliefs that we have, but they might also be contributing to the problem or the challenge. So if we react, potentially we're also going to continue to create more of the same. It's absolutely a high road we have to take when we choose to respond, because our programming may be that we always react in a certain way, which also contributes to the status quo, you know, the same patterns, the same circumstances. So yeah, it is work to consciously choose to respond and choose our thoughts. And it's also knowing we can do that and how to do that. There's a great book written by Viktor Frankl, who was a Viennese psychiatrist in a concentration camp, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And in this particular story, you know, they took everything from him. They took his family, his children, his clothes, and the last connection that he had to the life he had known was his wedding ring. And they took that from him too. And in that moment, he said, I had a choice, right? I could choose my thoughts in response to it, or I could let that define me. And, you know, we talk about attitude, and everyone talks about attitude, but most people don't understand what it is. You know, attitude is a composite of your thoughts, feelings, and actions expressed. It's this energy that you put out. And we can be a very positive person, but be thinking negative thoughts about ourselves or somebody else. We can be thinking one thing and behaving differently, which means we're putting out an attitude that's not in harmony with what we want. And so when we understand that, that is tangible. We can apply that. You know, in this situation, how have I been thinking? How am I feeling about it? What am I doing about it? It could be your kids. It could be a business situation. Is that creating the results that I want? Yes or no? No, not really. All right. How do I want to be thinking about it? How do I want to feel about it? How do I want to behave towards it or myself? And when we then can do that habitually, we start to put out a new energy. The situation starts to transform itself by the law of cause and effect. I mean, these laws that we talk about, they're physics. They're year 9 physics, and we all know them. We just have never been taught how to use them in our actual lives and businesses and relationships. And then we can cope with what is going on around us in a far better way, a more effective way.
Authenticity, Karen, what's authenticity to you?
Well, this is such a great question. I think for me, authenticity is being the whole of me, you know, recognizing myself as a whole being, a spiritual being, an intellectual being, an emotional being, a physical being, and letting that be part of me. You know, when I say intuition guided me, or I felt really guided to make this phone call, that's being authentic. Like, that is true. I don't want to shy away from saying that because it's true for me, because I understand that there is this part of me that is also playing a role in how my life plays out. So, you know, for me, it's embracing that. Being authentic, the highest, best version of me is embracing all aspects of myself. It is also embracing that in others. It is seeing that in others, even if they don't see that for themselves yet. They don't understand that for themselves. They don't see themselves as that. It doesn't matter. It is who they are. So, you know, being authentic to me is embracing that in myself and in other people, in organizations, that we've got to work with that, and not being afraid to be the whole of me and express that. And I think authenticity leads very much into integrity as well. And integrity for me is honesty and truth. Am I being honest with myself? Am I being truthful with myself and others? And that also means not diminishing or denying myself what I want, or feeling shame about that, or guilt. I shouldn't what I want, or I shouldn't be who I think I am, or, you know, so I think it's a beautiful conversation about embracing the whole of who we are, and then living with integrity in that, being honest and truthful to ourselves and the people around us.
I had never considered before that we could help others know their own authenticity. So that's just
And
a
how we
really
help others is in the first instance knowing it for ourselves. How we help our children is knowing it for ourselves. You know, the number of parents that I'll have that'll come to me and say, how do I help my child? Or how do I help my 16-year-old? And I'm like, well, do you know about this for yourself? When you get it for you, you help everybody else around you. And we become a far more effective leader. And we're all leaders. You don't need a title or a particular wage to tell you that you're allowed to lead. You're leading your own life. You're the CEO of your own life. And we're both leading and following, you know, all the time. So when we're leading, our children are following us. And then so who are we following? And, you know, when we get this for ourselves, we can help everybody else. We give them permission effectively to also begin to discover and express their true potential as well.
That's very well said. I just have one more question for you, and I love quotes, so I'm really keen to hear what your favourite quote is, Karen. Brook?
Oh, well, this one was actually pretty easy, and it's interesting that this was so easy for me to choose, because in the past I've always been like, I don't know what my favorite quote is. There's so many. But the one that has truly transformed my life, it's a quote by Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. And he says, tell the world what you're going to do, but show them first. I'll say it again. Tell the world what you're going to do, but show them first. And where this quote came alive in my life was in 2015. And if you can imagine for a moment from the outside looking in, you know, I'd built this branding and communications business over about 10 years. I was transitioning more into business strategy, brand strategy, business. And there I was then hopping on a plane to go to Toronto and work with this man that everyone was like, what is she doing? You know, I'm going to come back and I'm going to become a PGI consultant and integrate this. I mean, I was already coaching. So that part of it was not, you know, I was already doing that work in businesses and with individuals. So that wasn't that unusual. But I remember thinking, like, what will my family think of me? What my parents are going to think? Like, what are my friends? Like, what planet is she on? And I just remember it wasn't, Bob had studied Think and Grow Rich his whole life. I hadn't up until that point in time. But I found this quote in it. Tell the world what you're going to do, but show them first. And I thought quietly, I made a quiet decision within myself. I said, I'm not going to talk to anyone about this. I'm not going to share with anyone what I'm doing. I'm just going to go do it. And I'm going to let my results speak louder than my words. And, you know, I'm not sure my family still really understand what I'm doing. They love me anyway. But in that first year, you know, I helped over 100 clients in my first year in 2015 of doing this high performance work, this subconscious paradigm shift work with clients. And then eventually I did a little seminar in Birdsville. It was early 2016, and I did this little in the beer garden of the Birdsville Hotel. And I remember my mum and dad being there, and dad afterwards just being like blown away, like, wow. For the first time in my life, I understand why he's actually been so successful in what is, you know, in terms of the process. He was an unconscious competent. You know, they're like, oh my God, this is your work. This is what you're doing. And I just thought, if I tell anyone what I'm about to do, I might be talked out of it. You know, their fears, doubts, and worries, they're going to project those on me. And my paradigm, my old self-image is going to buy into that. They're going to resonate with a part of me that is also still trying to figure this out. And I just decided I was just going to let my results speak. I wasn't going to tell anyone what my goal was, what I was trying to do, who I wanted to help. I was not going to talk about what I was going to do. I was going to do it. And then after the fact, they could all see the results. And I've done that my whole career since then. And it's given me that quote. when you begin to live like, it gives you time to grow with your goals before anyone else has say in it, before anyone else can project onto you or talk you out of it or have you consider the fears, doubts and worry. Like, I'm sure you've already thought about it, but that's not going to help you move forward, right? And I just think it just, do the work and a little bit more, not just your own work, but a little bit more for the lavishing sake, and go out there and create the results that you want. And then give them something to talk about, right? Give them something to talk about instead. And that's what I've done. And I hope that your listeners can do that too.
So tell the world what you're going to do, but show them first. Napoleon Hill. That's wonderful. Karen, thank you so much, because I know how busy you are and you're racing off to get another meeting. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm very grateful to have been involved with Elevate, and hopefully in the very near future we'll get together again and be part of something. So thank you so much,
Kelly. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm just so grateful to be here and with all of your listeners. I wish you all a beautiful day. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Thank you for watching and listening to my interview. If you'd like to hear more inspiring stories, subscribe to my YouTube channel or my podcast, and follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Life Journey TV.